Taking us right up to the opening bell on this Friday. Thank you, Mark, for joining us. They're all clapping away. Of course, the big story of the day in about half an hour from now, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell will deliver his speech. Will he be hawkish? Well, the general consensus is yes, he will continue to be aggressive, even though the latest numbers show inflation is easing, still high, but still easing just a little bit. Let's take a look at the big board as we have just got underway. And there you go. In the green, the Dow up very initially, 44 points, more green than red. Let's put it that way. Verizon, Amgen on the bottom. Amex and 3M on the top. Let's take a look at the S&P 500. As we see the Dow up about 0.1%. The S&P right now barely moving, up 1 point at 4,200 exactly. Let's take a look at NASDAQ. The tech exchange, if you like, the NASDAQ down. Well, let's call that unchanged. It's down 3 points, 12,635. And talking of big tech, let's look at some of those numbers as well, the big growth stocks, as we head into this last trading day of the week. Mixed bag. Apple is up slightly. So is Meta, barely. Microsoft barely up, but as you can see, Alphabet moving lower, Amazon moving lower. Very mixed bag. In fact, more in the red than green now. Let's take a look at Workday if we can. That stock soaring after beating earnings, up nearly 8%. Bring in Susan Lee. What are the highlights on this story, Susan?
A great springtime for Workday. So profit and sales did better. And you had the human resources financing software maker saying that more customers are signing up, which tells me that remote work and the remote work trend continues. So as a result, you have Workday issuing an upbeat guidance for the rest of this year. So they're going to make more money and more sales. Makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Stock up nicely, as we say. Let's take a look at Bed Bath & Beyond. Some talk of a comeback strategy,
Yeah,
right?
well, they're going to announce a new strategy next Wednesday, they say. Now, the company is on the verge of getting a $400 million lifeline in the form of a loan, according to the Wall Street Journal. Now, the home goods retailer, we know, is in trouble. The stock is down 40% this year. Bed Bath is losing market share, and that's after trimming back on those 20% coupons that we all know and love. Also, Ryan Cohen, GameStop fame, activist investors selling off that 10% stake last week. So let's see what they say next Wednesday. You know, they still haven't announced a new permanent CEO, and that's after they pushed out Mark Triton. And some have called his term disastrous, including an ill-advised foray into private brands, especially during a supply chain glut, which, of course, didn't help with the foot traffic in the stores.
No, it did not. Let's take a look at Gap. We've been talking about the inventory problems for retailers. Is it the same for Gap?
You know, actually, I thought Gap, and I think the stock reflects it, they had a better springtime than anticipated. They made money instead of losing money if you look at the adjusted numbers, which exclude some of the inventory numbers. And this is because, according to them, consumers are going back into the office, so they need dressier clothes, and that's why they're buying them from Banana Republic. Now, despite the better spring, you had Gap saying that they are pulling their guidance for the year. Old Navy still a weak spot for them. We know that. Inventory levels also a concern going forward. And maybe like everybody else, they're just waiting and holding their breath for what Jerome Powell has to say in Jackson Hole in just a few minutes.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Oh, by the way, Elon Musk, we've talked about that. Elon Musk partnering with T-Mobile, is that right?
Yeah, so it was a flashy announcement last night. I thought it was great. SpaceX and T-Mobile offering to connect mobile phone subscribers from T-Mobile up to those Starlink satellites. And that means that T-Mobile users could get better access to cell phone reception in more rural parts of the country. So think of outside of the cities. Now, that means they're going to cut the need for cell towers, which have been limiting since you need physical towers near your mobile phone in order for them to work. So Starlink, by the way, Starlink, I think is the crown jewel, and a lot of people say is a crown jewel in SpaceX. It's worth a majority of the SpaceX $100 billion valuation. I think Starlink on its own would be worth $60 billion, and that's going to be a more, and you've even heard that from Elon Musk, it's going to be an even more lucrative and valuable business than launching rockets for him in the future.
Impressive indeed. Let's take a look at Dell if we can, the computer folks. Down big, I think. Yep, down 8.5%. What's the problem?
So quarterly sales were less than anticipated. We know that PC sales are slipping in this return to work era. Also some really tough compares when people were locked at home, so they were buying PCs, and you had this resurgent PC boom once again. Now you heard NVIDIA yesterday saying that gaming chips for PCs were challenging. And I think that today, with all these report cards coming in, Ashley, we're trying to decide whether or not people are actually going back into the office, or are they still in that remote work era, still looking to work elsewhere outside of those big cities.
Right. Let's take a look at Ulta. Stu calls them the beauty people. Did they raise their guidance?
Well, they are. I don't know if you've ever, partaken in shopping at Ulta. I know we all wear makeup for a living.
No.
So they actually did better in the springtime, better sales, better profit here, upbeat outlook on the return to work, and that means you need to look good in order to see people in person once again. And that's continuing a recent trend that we've seen amongst these beauty-related companies. And oh, by the way, Mary Dillon is moving on to Foot Locker because she's been so good in boosting sales in an online e-commerce era.
Well, good for her. All right, Susan, great stuff as always. Thank you very much. Ulta up 1.33%. Let's take a look at the big bird. Let's take a look at the big bird, the big board, and take a look at some of the winners. The Dow, as you can see, up about 0.2%, 65 points. But let's take a look at some of the stocks shining in the very early going. Well, Salesforce.com, JP Morgan, Dow, Boeing, 3M, JP Morgan up 1%, and Salesforce up just over 1.33%. Let's take a look at the S&P 500 gainers this morning. EA, Electronic Arts, is on the board, up 4.5%. The Gap, we were talking about them. The Gap is up, 2%. Etsy, homemade goods, up also 2%. Now, the NASDAQ winners, EA again, of course, Comcast up 1%. Fox Corporation, yay, up nearly 1%. And Netflix up 0.75% in the early going. Let's take a look at the 10-year yield. We have seen the yield come back a little bit, although it has been above 3%, depending on what Jay Powell says today. It'll be interesting to see how that reacts. Right now, it's up just a little bit, just over 3%, 3.04%. Let's take a look at the price of gold, down marginally, down $5 or thereabouts at $17.65. Bitcoin, that was pretty much unchanged for much of yesterday. Today it's up a little bit, $175 at $21,740 for Bitcoin. Oil, meantime, still way under $100, which is good news, I guess, if you don't want to pay higher gas prices. Down just slightly at $91.85 for a barrel of crude. Nat gas up nearly 3%, at $9.65. And talking of gas, let's take a look at the average price for a gallon of regular across the country. Yes, it is $3.86, a whole lot better than it was a couple of months ago. And what about California? Taxes and regulation. $5.28. That is the average price of gas in the Golden State.